Welcome to Travel Again Presents, the weekly travel roundup covering the headwinds and tailwinds impacting the business of travel. Please welcome our hosts, Mike McCormick and Ed Silver. Hello, Mike. How you doing?
Good, Ed. How are you doing?
I am good. Welcome to episode 5, season 2 of the Travel Again podcast. Mike, as you know, and you can see, I'm back in the Asheville area. We got back on the 13th without running water here in Asheville. But then running water returned on the 18th. That's Friday the 18th. And because we record the podcast on different days, just give you a sense of how long the area was at without running water. As of today, we still have running water, but it is not potable yet, Mike. It's not drinkable yet. But it is a major step forward for the area here in Asheville.
Well, and unfortunately, like from the outside looking in, though, there still seems to be so much misinformation about what's really happening on the ground, which is a shame, and it's unfortunately, been politicized some, and you've got, again, I feel for you because, I mean, we talk all the time and I know, and clearly you're there and know what's really happening on the ground. Maybe just give a little couple of updates on that as well.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a while before this area recovers. There are definitely pockets of real destruction, throughout the broader Asheville area. But in terms of just some of that misinformation, Mike, I mean, one thing I've noted since returning from my evacuation is that FEMA is everywhere. I counted 15 FEMA stations. There are 10 FEMA units going door to door. There is free drinking water everywhere. It is plentiful. Everywhere you go, someone is giving out free drinking water, and we're using bottled water because you have to. And look, we're going to be in this kind of recovery zone for a long time. But the key in terms of that misinformation, look, I strongly believe the help is here. It's going to stay for a long time. And look, if you are in this area and you need help, do not hesitate to reach out to FEMA. They have a mobile app, they have a website, they have a phone number. Like I said, there's 15 FEMA locations of massive size, within a kind of 5 to 10 mile radius of the Asheville area. And also, look, not for nothing, but if you're in the area and you need help with anything, just DM me directly, and for those not in the Western North Carolina area who want to help, please consider, donating to the Red Cross to continue to help Western North Carolina. And by the way, there was a hurricane that, hit Florida just behind Helene. And so the Red Cross is in need of lots of help. So please feel free to donate and stay Asheville strong, Asheville.
That's good.
All right, Mike, let's get rolling with episode 5 and on to the news. Mike, article 1 is just a fun one. There's nothing more fun than massive companies talking about buying each other. It was reported that Uber and Expedia are looking at each other for an acquisition. They call it the Dream Deal. It was reported in the Financial Times, Uber exploring buying Expedia. It does seem to be a trial balloon. No active talks are underway that anyone would report, but it makes intuitive sense, maybe, given that Uber CEO Dara has a past, and current ties with Expedia. Sure. And then one other note, Mike, that, I don't follow these stocks that closely, but Uber's market cap is $173 billion. That was as of this article on October 16th. And Expedia market cap just under $20 billion. What do you think of this deal, Mike? True, false? Well, what does it say to you?
Look, it's fascinating, right? A little bit of the big could get bigger, but I think more so just that you've got these potential for some really maybe potentially unique combinations down the road of different companies because, you've got obviously a lot of market dynamics that are changing, the ongoing kind of, changes in the travel industry specifically, but you also just talk in general about, bringing on AI into the picture and a number of other factors that might, make some of these bigger alignments, whether they're outright acquisitions or just broad partnerships to start, could get pretty interesting in terms of acquiring customers. And it does speak a bit to the, I'd say the changing dynamics around the OTA business too, specifically. And Expedia obviously divested of Agencia and sold that to Amex GBT. You've got a number of things that are changing again in and around the space. So again, we could probably have a whole episode just dreaming up different combinations of other mega combos that would be really interesting to watch. But that was one. Again, I don't know whether, like you said, whether that was just real or someone's kind of a comment was made and then an article was written. But it is fascinating nonetheless.
Yeah, it made a lot of people start to ask, well, maybe not Expedia and Uber, but what about Amazon and Expedia,
Right.
and what about that combo? So definitely got the mind thinking about what's going on in the travel world there.
Well, and the other underlying trend too, which we talked about before, is the ongoing cost of development of what it takes to be successful in this era and going forward, and the amount of capital investments required for companies to stay current and or lead in a marketplace. And so, it does lend itself to having, either really large players with big capital budgets or, more early stage, companies that are focused and trying to develop a certain capability that could either grow into a big business or be acquired. But probably in between is not a great place to be necessarily, right? Because it's hard to, if you're either really innovating in some dynamic way or you're big and you have large scale and can afford to continue to develop. So it'll
Yep.
be interesting to watch.
I think it's an interesting one. I think they could do some cool things, and I really like Dari. He's done a great job at Uber, and so rooting
Clearly.
for something interesting to happen there, Mike.
Yep.
All right, Article 2. We talk a lot about Boeing on this show for good reason, Mike.
Yep.
And this article says Boeing's machinists reject contract extending the strike. Last we talked, there was rumors that they might figure this one out, but apparently not yet.
Well, I think I lost my bet on FanDuel or what it's like about whether the strike would get ended and they would accept the contract. I thought the contract was going to go through. I thought that they would get it through with the union because they are at this point, Boeing certainly needs the deal to happen, but so do the workers. I mean, this is the stage where they did get a number of concessions. It looked like they were meeting more than halfway. And now it's disappointing the other way because it starts to be like there's no it's kind of blood from a stone at some point. Like you get to a point where it's like, hey, look, you got to also you got to make the deal. You can hold out and hold out and hold out, but the company's got to be able to afford it. And in the meantime, the longer this goes on, it's just adding to Boeing's issues and struggles to get quality aircraft produced and out the door. Our whole industry is dependent on it. Obviously, a key driver of airlines' ability to grow and to continue to refresh aircraft, et cetera. Key part of their business. So this is not a great sign. We could easily put it on the headwind part of the discussion later as well, but it's not unfortunately a very negative update for sure.
All right. Well, best of luck to both Boeing and the union
Yeah,
here. They figure this out.
they got to
Um,
figure it out.
Got to figure it out, Mike. This next article I pulled kind of went under the radar, and I think it's interesting for you to bring up with our guest about kind of distribution and disintermediation. But Frontier Airlines was removed from the Sabre GDS, and I actually pulled this directly from the Frontier website where they spoke about it and where it was announced. Frontier content is no longer available in Sabre as of October 1st. It values its partnership with travel agencies and is committed to assisting mutual customers during this transition, but clearly not enough to be in the Sabre GDS. What do you make of this, Mike?
Well, I mean, the LCC category, is certainly under a lot of financial pressure right now. They're clearly, you've got Frontier, you've got Spirit, et cetera, that are struggling, right? And financially and otherwise. Southwest, again, going through a little differently, but certainly going through its struggles as well. Um, I think this is one where it's a few things come to mind. One is, well, like you said, we'll talk about with our guest about basically the ability to connect anytime, anywhere, not necessarily just through a single channel, having the ability to have your options for connectivity and how important that is. but also here in the case of, some of this may just be required for, Frontier, others, it they may just find themselves in a position where the cost of distribution through the GDS doesn't work for them,
Yeah.
clearly. And so it'll be interesting to see how some of this plays out. But again, for the industry, and certainly in terms of agents trying to serve customers, they have to be able to get to the content wherever it's available. And if it's not available through GDS, then they have to have the ability to adapt.
Yes. And I do think we should talk about it with our guests because, agencies, OTAs, everybody's got to have their distribution strategy in place because if you're relying on one GDS or one connection and you lose access to
Yeah,
a major airline or an important LCC for your customers, it's difficult to recover. So
it certainly is.
one to keep an eye on. Mike, those are the stories we prepped for, but I have one hot off the presses, a surprise article for you today. As we were preparing for the show, I pulled this one. And so let's get your surprise reaction. Southwest Airlines ends feud with activist investor Elliott.
Uh,
Carrier agreed to add 6 new directors, and the CEO gets to remain in his role. Surprise. What do you make of this?
Well, I think clearly Elliott and was pushing hard, and maybe in a way, well, certainly overstating their position, maybe to some extent, or the leverage they had. I think they used every bit of that leverage to try to force some change. If Southwest can do it in a way that they don't lose their identity and soul doing it, it may end up being a positive outcome for them, in terms of making some changes they needed to make to get growth going again and getting better margins, and keeping up with the other airlines, the other competitors. And not necessarily a bad thing, kind of a rough ride, certainly over the last year or so to get there. But now the proof is in the execution by the current management team and their ability to, adapt and pull off these changes effectively. But Elliott, I think, a bit of a detente kind of stand down. I'm sure, if Southwest misses a quarter or delays an implementation of any of their plan, that it won't be the last we'll hear from Elliott. But they don't have the majority in the boardroom, and they own a substantial but certainly still minority part of ownership of the stock. So they've probably used every bit of leverage they have at this point.
Okay. Well, it's nice to see that one, at least for the moment, come
Yeah.
to a truce, as the Wall Street Journal declared. So, all right, Mike, that's it for the news. We will be right back with our guests. Thanks to our sponsor, Safe Travel RX, an app that takes the worry off your itinerary, providing travel peace of mind with emergency response components, travel security, and risk management, especially for those traveling internationally. It includes 24/7 global concierge assistance. Landed in the hospital in China, forgot your prescription, wallet stolen. Safe Travel RX is your prescription for better, safer travel. Download it today to discover the power of Safe Travel RX and reach out to them if you have interest in offering this tool to your travelers to provide them with the duty of care you are required to provide. Safe Travel RX, your prescription for better travel. Okay, Mike, on to our guest. Please join me in welcoming Steve Singh. Steve is managing director at Madrona Venture Group and recently took on the role as CEO of Spotnana. Before joining Madrona in 2020, Steve has had a long and storied career building and running scale businesses, including being the founder and CEO of Concur, a NASDAQ-listed company, and serving on the executive board of SAP, running its cloud business group. At Madrona, Steve primarily focuses on next-generation B2B and enterprise-related startups. He invests across a wide variety of technology areas, including machine learning, artificial intelligence, intelligent applications, and next-gen cloud infrastructure. Steve is on the board of portfolio companies, Clary and Leaf Logistics. He also serves as the executive chairman of Spotnana, Troop, Stratify, Magnify, and Center. Goodness gracious, when he's not in the office, Steve loves working with others to build cool products and companies. He enjoys spending time with family and good friends, skiing, exploring the world, and enjoying a great meal, good wine, and great conversation. Speaking of great conversation, please welcome to the stage, Steve Singh.
Hi, Mike. How you?
Hey, Steve.
Welcome to the podcast, Steve. It's nice to see you.
Yeah,
It's like,
and it's good to hear that things are recovering and that you and the family are doing well.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that.
it's kind of the trifecta. We had Saroshan and Crystal, and now you. We could make a whole season just out of your company's leaders.
You had the better part of the crew. So let's see how today goes.
Well, look, so we've all known each other, a long time through the industry, but I mean, I have to ask the question everyone asks it, I'm sure, along the way, like why? Like, what's so attractive about it's like the magnet that draws you back into travel and to doing this, in a sense, again, like what brought you back? What made you want to get into it?
I would imagine a part of what drew me back is the same thing that draws you and Ed to the travel industry. You think about it, like whether it's business or personal travel. I mean, travel, you get an opportunity to interact with other human beings from different cultures, different parts of the world. You get to go build amazing products together, experience new locations, just enjoy life. And I would argue that travel allows you to really understand one another a lot better. And I think, especially if you think about what's happening in most parts of the world today, I think a little bit more understanding of one another is probably a good thing. That's fundamentally what draws me into the travel industry and keeps me very, very hooked in it. That said, there's other things, right? And if you think about what's happened in the last 5 years, like it's more than 5, about 7 years now, we've moved from SaaS to cloud native architectures, right? Which is really enabling intelligent applications. Machine learning has evolved into artificial intelligence, which is literally changing the landscape of how applications are built. And you're going to see literally every application category get redone. You're going to see industries adopt AI in a way that transforms those industries. And so, I mean, we're literally living in an incredible era for innovation. I would argue the golden era of innovation for the travel industry. And so it's hard not to be excited about it and be, hopefully play a small role in that transformation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Dune, the book, right. So Frank Herbert wrote Dune in 1964, and it took until the last couple of years for the filmmaking kind of capabilities to catch up to actually be able to bring his vision to screen in a way that he wrote it.
Yeah.
And I'd liken the same thing with, you and I were all, involved back in the early days when we were envisioning like these travel agent, like AI tool, like type offerings where, this computer, generated activity would plan your travel for you and be your automated assistant. It's like, wait, we're on the verge now. We're finally here.
I think in the next 2 years, years, you're going to be able to literally say, book my travel for next week. That's it. That's all you have to say. And I think what you're going to see is AI agents that are focused on travel. They'll be integrated into lots of different experiences, like a Spotnana, like a Troop or a Center or Direct Travel or any number of other companies. But you can literally just say that, and it'll understand. Say, okay, I understand Steve's calendar. I understand not only where you have to be, but I see the pattern of you like to show up 2 hours before the board dinner. So you get a chance to actually go interact with folks beforehand. That here's the rest of your meetings, and you need to be back, in my case in Seattle, 3 hours before a meeting that happens on Friday. And it already knows my preferences. It already knows my corporate policy. It'll go make all those bookings for you, populate your calendar with all that information, generate an itinerary. And then I would argue in the not too distant future, in fact, in sometime in 2025, you're going to see the ability to deal with travel disruptions in a completely automated model.
Yeah.
So we're living in that era right now.
Steve, is that what drove, because we didn't mention it in your bio, but you also had an investment in auto recently. Yeah. Is that what drove part of that investment?
Absolutely. In fact, auto's focused in a segment of the market that, in my view, is completely underserved. This is the unmanaged travel segment. Yeah. And if you think about the tools in that segment, it's really, you're searching on Google, you're booking on Expedia or others. And I would argue that everybody wants a managed travel experience. They just want it at a cost structure that makes sense for their particular business needs. And they want it to be a consumer-like experience. That doesn't exist today, but it will.
Right. Yeah. So let's go maybe talk about the portfolio companies you put together, and stepping back maybe even from a Madrona perspective, which has a broader tech investment portfolio. Like how does that all fit together, and how do you manage all of that from your seat?
Well, first of all, I have 5 other partners at Madrona who are incredible partners, and they manage their portfolio of investments. Look, as Ed, as you described, I tend to invest in enterprise software. This is what I know, and so if you want to make money, you're far better off investing in things you actually understand. And so and even then, it's not a given. So I try to invest in enterprise software, and to be fair, I started off investing with a couple of very focused investments in travel. One was Center, which is reinventing the expense management space. Right. And the other was Spotnana. And I invested in Spotnana because today what you can do in development as compared to back in the software as a service days or even on-premise days, you can develop world-class global platforms at 1/10 the cost structure of just 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so being able to solve something as what Spotnana is trying to solve, which is the infrastructure layer of travel, being able to solve that in the hundreds of millions of dollars of investment versus the billions, well, that enables, it gives you a shot at really solving that problem in a unique way that enables a much better traveler experience. And so after these 2 investments, I realized, hey, look, with the benefit of cloud native architectures, with the benefit of what is happening with AI, that there's other areas within travel that we can go automate and improve upon. One was group meetings and events. If you think about it, that's, except for the very high end, that's still largely paper, right? I mean, you go ask anybody that does meetings for between 5 and 200-300 people. It's Excel documents, it's printed pages, it's emails routing all over the world, and so we should be able to bring automation and a digital delightful experience there that is equivalent to what I would hope we can get to in consumer, or I'm sorry, transient travel, which is the perfect trip vision. But then on top of that, we also saw that if you can really build these technologies and you can really start to use AI to drive the cost structure down, right, then there's an opportunity to reinvent what a TMC looks like.
Yeah.
And that part is really important, because to me, the idea that the TMC goes away is silly. Like the TMC is not going to go away. It will take a different shape. It'll have a different set of value that it offers. But it's critically important to business travel. And I would argue it's critically important even in consumer travel. I just wanted to interact with that TMC partially digitally, partially through a human being. But I want that human being to understand everything that's going on in my trip the moment they pick up the phone and talk to me. I don't want to explain anything. They should see everything. And so we saw an opportunity to reinvent the TMC space, and that's why we invested in direct travel. And then auto is really the tip of the spear. How do you get to a conversational interface with travel that is leveraging things like Spotnana, that's leveraging things like Center for expense reporting, that's leveraging direct travel for servicing? So it's a buildup of the thesis.
So, right now the pieces are just that. I mean, you have the various brands and companies, and they're being their network in fact being integrated together, but also independently serving other customers and going after business. Do you see that structure kind of changing the portfolio approach? Do you see it coming together at some point, to be determined? I mean,
Mike, one of the things that's different about cloud native architectures is if you really take the philosophical approach that you want an open platform, that you want anybody to be able to extend it and add value to it. So it's not a proprietary closed environment, like frankly, the travel industry has operated with for the last 40, 50 years.
Right.
If you take that approach, then the reality is you can integrate across different companies in a way that is just as delightful and just as seamless as if it was being done by the same engineers in the same company. And that's what we're seeing. So the Troop is integrated into Spotnana. in a way that you can use Troop to manage your group travel program. But when you actually book travel, it's actually calling Spotnana behind the scenes. You just don't know it.
Right.
Right. When you're issuing a virtual card, well, it's actually Center's virtual card. You just don't know it. Right.
Right.
It's being used for that, and filing the expense report, it's Center behind the scenes. When it's being serviced, it's direct travel behind the scenes. And so a lot of the value of cloud native architectures is you should be able to allow any company, whether it's wholly owned by you or it's owned by another group of people, or there's a young entrepreneur that's sitting in, I don't know, pick an emerging economy that says, hey, look, I can add value to this. That to me is the beauty of these open architectures. You can leverage innovation from anywhere. It doesn't have to be the same company.
But Steve, let me ask the question more directly, though.
Yeah, please.
If each of these investments is running independently, yes, you've got investment in them, but you're not CEO of all of them. How are you ensuring that infrastructure work is actually going in a single unified direction?
Yeah, Ed, there's the two tools that I use to help drive that.
Is one of them a whip? What is it?
No, the most important tool is you have to have a common view of what problem you're trying to solve. And for us, our companies are united by this idea of the perfect trip, right? How do you enable a delightful travel experience? And by the way, that vision is broad enough that anybody can contribute to it. And to be fair, every one of the companies I'm in benefits by making that vision possible. So it's in their best interest to go make that vision possible. That's number one. And number two is, look, good human beings talk to one another. They actually, collaborate. They actually share experiences. And sometimes, yeah, we disagree. And my feeling is that's okay. If one of the companies says, look, I have a slightly different vision, my feeling is go for it. Go make that a reality, because ultimately the customer gets to decide. Ultimately, the customer says, yeah, I love this. And guess what? Everybody else will start to move in that direction. Or the customer rejects it. And you adjust your trajectory. To me, that's what's most important, is allow people to actually experiment and innovate, but within a common kind of vision.
Yeah, because one of the also historical, I think, problems for the industry is that you had customers, especially larger customers, who would always have a degree of customization that they'd always want. They wouldn't, and you, like you said, because a lot of the development and tools were all in a closed environment, it made it really challenging for companies to scale. Ultimately, because everybody had a custom something that they needed. But in this environment, do you think like that? Is it better now? Certainly having an open architecture helps. The tools, your cloud-based helps, but you're still trying to meet customer need. Do you find that to still be a big challenge, or is it?
Look, Mike, I think we're in the early stages of this, so I don't want to pretend like we've solved this problem. But that said, I do think that there are the foundation to allow customers to configure to their heart's content is there. Now, the question is, who does that configuration? Right. Who optimizes it for their particular needs? And what I like about the cloud native architectures is that the developers within a company can go modify our platform. That's number one.
Right.
I would argue the next generation TMCs are going to bring value in configuring platforms to meet the specific needs of a specific customer in a specific industry or a specific geography. Right. So what you're seeing is that the ability to develop, the ability to add value has actually expanded. Right. Back when I started off in building software, there might have been 2 or 3 million professional developers in the world. Right. And if you go back at, if you go to today, there's maybe 20, 25 million, professional hardcore developers. But if you look at the ability to build value on top of that, these development environments and on top of these open platforms, the number of developers, using that term a little bit more, broadly, you're talking about 125 million plus developers. And that is only getting larger. In fact, if you think about where is AI being used in perhaps the most the broad-based model today, development,
yeah,
the ability to write specific code.
So, Steve, do you really think that approach, and again, kind of be direct about it, do you really think that approach to software development will reduce the likelihood that the base platform will be bastardized by some single giant customer's individual needs versus the platform needs? And that's always been the challenge with
Oh,
massive
oh,
customers, and you've got some big customers that we've read about in the news.
absolutely. This is to me the only way it can be done. A completely open platform that look, like let's take the case of Spotnana. Our mission is to go build a platform that powers the perfect trip, right? Whether it's a business trip or a consumer trip, it doesn't matter. And so we are going to add a lot of functionality within that core platform, not only for the consumer of travel, right? The person who books travel, but also for the TMCs that actually serve that traveler. So a lot of the innovation that we're building is specifically designed to make it easier to run your TMC. In fact, our goal is you should be able to run your TMC at 50 cents on the dollar in cost structure, right? Using modern technologies like Spotnana. So now we think we're obviously spending a lot of money in building out the platform. We think we can meet most of your needs. Can we meet all of them? Probably not, right? Because there's going to be some TMC in a geography that is very specific to the needs of that geography or industry that they serve. And my feeling is, as long as you're integrating through our APIs, and as long as you're adding value through the APIs, innovate to your heart's content. In fact, more than that, you can take that innovation and make it available to others to use.
Yeah, I think the long tail, to your point, will always be there. But I mean, I agree with you. I think that the industry overall has been right for this. I mean, we've worked with customers, advised some large customers too on their whole strategy around on the opposite side of this.
Yeah.
How do we get to the content? We talked about the frontier, just a small case in point, but and then our advice is always like you need the options, you need the ability to like adapt to whatever the market's doing. And if you need certain content and there's only this way to get it, or you have to, whatever way you have to get there, you need to be able to facilitate that. You can't rely on the same old tools necessarily to get you there. Not that, the GDS is still a workhorse. There's still, elements of the industry that can be efficiently, accomplished, but you need the ability to connect and adapt no matter what the situation.
100%, right? I would argue that GDS is still very important to the overall industry. That said, whether it's NDC or the next generation of NDC or whatever terminology you want to use, I think NDC has reached a point where it's, especially in the Spotnana platform, where it really can start to add real value for us as consumers. So if you think about it, over the last 20 years, NDC was effectively a pipe that allowed you to say, I want to connect content from the supplier to the end consumer. The problem is that there was no capability to provide servicing on top of that, because there was no technology that was really built around NDC to actually provide that servicing. Well, Spotnana we've spent a lot of money. I won't say specifically, but we spent a lot of money really building servicing into that, around that NDC pipe and into our platform. So if you're a TMC, you can use our NDC pipe, you can use Saber's, you can use anybody's NDC pipe. But the value of our NDC pipe is we'll build a servicing architecture around it that allows you to treat that piece of content the same as a piece of content via GDS pipe. But I would argue that that's the beginnings of real innovation around NDC. You also have to look at this and say, well, how do you understand the data around the traveler? How do you understand the data around the supplier? How do you build a traveler graph, a supplier graph, frankly, a TMC graph, and then provide the TMC tools, the supplier tools, to say, let me make it really easy for you to understand the needs of the traveler, and frankly, for the traveler to understand what's available from the supplier, and provide real-time ability to merchandise to the individual. That takes real development effort and real investment in innovation, but also it has to be open. Right? Just because you do that innovation doesn't mean you solve the problem. If you make it open, now you're saying anybody can add value to it. Anybody can actually, build upon it, as opposed to here's another system that allows you to lock in an architecture.
But Steve, are we really there yet with NDC? Has any traveler really experienced the benefit of that development yet?
Not at scale. Not at scale. That said, it is working. We have customers who are using it today. But the scale that I'm looking for, the scale that Direct Travel and others are looking for, is how do we put this in the hands of tens of thousands of corporate customers? How do we make sure that millions of of travelers have access to it. That just takes time. But if the functionality is fantastic, if it delivers a better experience at a lower cost structure, guess what? People are going to use it.
Yeah, I mean, and just listening to everything you've just, we've been talking about, man, I'll tell you, you think about how fundamentally different our industry will be when people, I mean, just get over this like desire to have everything in a closed proprietary environment and really embrace the open nature of it. If we can get there, I mean, then the benefits will really, come out for the customer. But to Ed's point, we haven't seen, it's been a trickle at this point.
It has been, but somebody has to go lead that charge. And our view is that hey, to be fair, it not only is the technology architectures that have evolved that enable the opportunity to go build open platforms, but in all fairness, as much as COVID was certainly very bad for humanity, it enabled new innovations to take root much faster. Yeah, and it certainly helped us at Spotnana in giving us time to build an incredible platform.
Well, and then I'll kind of bring it all full circle back to, when you referenced the perfect trip, but what I give you a lot of credit for putting that out there as kind of a mission statement, because I think so often, right, I think every industry is this way, but certainly in travel we're very insular, we get very inwardly focused, and people lose sight of having a bigger vision. And I think it was great. I was really, I was impressed, but it really kind of bringing it to life a bit of like, not only saying like what your mission is and why you're there, but I think for the industry to step back a little bit, to your point, and kind of be a little more reflective and say, wait a minute, what are we doing? What are we really trying to accomplish here? I give you a lot of credit.
I appreciate you saying that, Mike. The thing that's interesting though, right, and this is part of this, is just as you spend more and more time in the industry, you realize that any vision that has an opportunity to become reality, to really help improve the experience, it can't be about you. It can't be about how you benefit. It has to be about how we as travelers, in the case of our industry, we as travelers and the companies that we work for, how they benefit, or the suppliers, right? The people that actually take the trips, the people that enable those trips to be possible, they have to benefit. And if we can help bring about that vision through technology, then okay, let's go do it. That's a worthy objective to go chase.
Maybe a little of the Steve Singh legacy when this is all, when we look.
It's an industry legacy, my friend. Industry legacy.
Well, so we do as a wrap up, we have a season 2 question we ask all our guests, but you're on the road a lot. So what's your guilty pleasure when you're out there traveling?
It's going to be boring, man. Look, I value my time with my friends. I value great conversation. I love wine. So great friends, great wine, great conversation. Boy, that's a perfect evening for me. So that's my guilty pleasure.
Well, that's not a bad one. And again, back to face-to-face and travel and why we all do it and why we love it, right? Because it gives us the opportunity to be out there and do that, right? Not just at home, but everywhere. So
absolutely.
Well, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Steve. We look forward to seeing you face-to-face soon. It's great to see you again.
Look forward to it. Ed,
thank you, everybody.
Mike, nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank you to Steve Singh, Managing Director at Madrona Venture Group and CEO and Chairman of Spotnana. Thanks again, Steve.
Pleasure.
That's it.
That was great, Mike. Enjoyed seeing Steve again. Wonderful to see him.
Yes. So,
Mike, we will be right back with headwinds and tailwinds.
So I just want to take a minute and talk a little bit about Travel Again Advisory and what we do in our business to really help companies, bring clarity to complex issues, infuse creativity into our solutions for them, and elevate those companies to a new level of competitiveness in today's dynamic world, and certainly the world that we were just talking a lot about in the interview with Steve. Our last project, we worked with a very large travel entity and helped them to bring their supplier strategy into the current day and beyond, and navigate around changes specifically in the airline distribution world, and with NDC and all the changes that are happening, but not just helping them figure out how to survive in that environment, but actually leverage it to find a way to take advantage of it and propel their business in a whole new way to be successful. And I think as we move ahead, one of the things we can do and do as an advisory firm is really help companies do that. We get involved a lot in transactional work as well, but the realities are, in this environment, you need a new strategy for this day. If you're using yesterday's strategy, you likely will not be successful. So if you need help at all, want to, basically have a chat. We say we don't, as Geico says, give them 15 minutes. Well, we need like 30. But if we get about 30 minutes of your time, we can certainly help you take a look and maybe consider refreshing your strategy or game plan.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And now we will wrap with headwinds and tailwinds, where we identify what we think is adding value to travel or taking it away. Mike, you're up first with headwinds.
Yeah, so this one was the more I read it and reread it, the more frustrated I got. I think it was an interesting article. It was about airlines cracking down with behavior in terms of boarding behavior at the gate. And there was an article written. It was in Australia, but it was written and it was kind of focusing on major airlines. And they talked about how they're so frustrated that the airline employees would get because people kind of tend to crowd in the gate, board out of order, even though they're clearly being given a 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 boarding order, and all the things that as they go through their regular progression. And
was this an article about me, Mike? What's going on here?
Well, might be, but they called it. It said employees called it gate lice, and we're like actually very negative about it. And it really took me. I mean, it was one of those where I like, this is where airlines and any company or any brand actually can really lose sight of why they're there, and what the behavior of their customers are, and the anxiety and stress that people have when they're traveling. The reason why they crowd the gate is not because they want to crowd the gate. It's because they're concerned about, maybe they're on a budget and didn't want to pay the, $200 to have their 5 bags checked for them and their family members. Or maybe they're concerned about, they've got stuff that they can't afford. They're on a really tight trip with really tight connections and or meetings they have to get right to, and can't afford to worry about whether their bag is going to be there and all that goes with that. And people are just have anxiety about travel. It's not like just
feel my pulse go up as soon as we start.
Yeah. You're worried about getting there. You're worried about the trip, what business, it's like, and so there is some anxiety at the gate. There isn't, but to treat it like somehow these passengers are being annoying to them about their kind of flawed boarding process. It's like, stop. I mean, I get status people board earlier, or at least get and all that, but you got to give people a break here. And I don't think, again, I travel all the time. You do too. I mean, all the time. I mean, yeah, and I'm respectful. Look, if I check my bags, I let everybody else get on first. I mean, I'm not in any hurry if I'm just getting on and getting in my seat. It's like, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think there's like a little bit of that, like, hey, just don't forget who's paying the bills here and your customer. And again, don't disrespect the fact that people do have a lot of anxiety when they travel, particularly getting on a flight. It's like, it's a big deal to get through that whole process to finally get to the plane. So anyway, a little rant, but I was really like taken aback by I think the gate lice really pissed me off. It's
that one's gonna stick with me, Mike, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think it will. Yeah.
All right, anyway. Mike, I've got a tailwind for us, changing topics, but back to air. United Airlines announced its largest ever international route expansion for the summer of 2025. And I just love to see airlines expanding to new and unusual places. They're going to increase flights to some tourist favorites like Spain, Italy, and France, but also some brand new routes to lesser visited destinations like Mongolia, Greenland, and Senegal. And so United commented, Patrick Quayle of United said, "We're trying to fly to places that speak to all travelers, from honeymooners to adventure travelers and beyond." And so I really love to see the expansion. I love the unusual locations. I think it's great for the industry. And so, I hope to see this with other airlines as well, Mike.
Yeah, and it's great, and it's also just again, having been everything the industry's gone through, through COVID and the recovery and all the things that we worked on in terms of the helping to drive that recovery, track it. We're at that inflection point where now we're back to a foundation for the industry that is solid. Certainly now for airlines to be more speculative about routes,
Yeah.
going to thinner routes, even summer seasonal ones where they're doing so many days a week. All that's really healthy, and it's great for it's a great sign for how, let's say, how bullish I think clearly United and I think others are about even 2025. That all things rolling along here, it should really be a very exciting year for travel. So good
All
sign.
right, Mike. Thank you for that. Mike, that is our show today. Thanks again to our sponsor, Safe Travel RX. And Mike, as you know, we will be back here again next week. We have an amazing lineup over the next couple of weeks of
Really do.
guests. And so I'm looking forward to seeing you and seeing all of our guests in the future. Thanks, Mike. It's great to see you.
Great to see you.